Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Ektron Developer Office Hours. I'm using the word exciting very liberally there. We're a bunch of nerds. Um, so this episode is going to be more of a general discussion. We'll probably discuss a couple of intranet, extranets type sites, but it's more a general discussion about driving business value or using technology to meet business needs. So a couple of awesome guests here. But first I want to mention if you have any questions, jump onto Twitter, tweet out your question using the hashtag EktronOH for Ektron Office Hours. And we'll respond to the questions as they come in. So to kick off introductions, Chris, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and Web Solutions?
Sure, thanks, James. My name is Chris Osterhout. I'm the Senior Director of Interactive Business Strategy at WSOL. We're a full-service agency that has done about 500 or so Ektron website implementations.
Great. And Ken?
I'm Ken McAndrew. I'm a Senior Technology Consultant at Celerity. We're also an Ektron partner and also a Site of the Year winner this year. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today, I think, as we talk about this topic.
All right, so that just means, Ken, that you've got work to do.
Yes.
For Next Synergy.
Yeah.
You've got a title to maintain there. Yeah, so that was for Nat Geo.
Yeah.
A pretty exciting intranet. The only thing I was a little disappointed in with Nat Geo, but I understand some of the reasons behind it was not a responsive site. But do you want to go into kind of where National Geographic started with that project? What were some of their goals, some of their problems that they were looking to meet with that?
Really, I think it was they wanted to get their intranet improved and not just be the typical intranet of putting documents and information about the company, but to make it truly an interactive platform. So a lot of what the really cool functionality of NG Connect, the intranet for Nat Geo is around social functions. For example, everybody has a profile, which is everybody you got a company directory, everybody's got a profile, but rather than just reading the profile information from the HR system, people can update this profile and put in things that they like, things they want to do, groups they want to, interests and stuff like that. And that lets people have more search capabilities to find people with similar interests and whatever. And then they can actually create custom groups to have social conversations, not just related to business teams, but also related to their interest groups. And then they've got the usual Facebook-like features for commenting and articles, and it's got a lot of the typical intranet stuff. But when it comes down to it, the really core, one of the big cores of that intranet is the profile and social collaboration. It was a little interesting. I was talking to John Diamond about it earlier. He was the principal architect on the site, and at the time, the rules of what they wanted to do were still shifting a bit. So Ektron's got built-in tools for notifications and collaboration and forums and things like this, but it was actually built with smart forms pretty much throughout, so that they could be a lot more flexible with the business rules and what needed to be done. And also, if things changed, if it's something outside of the Ektron scope of the API, they can go ahead and make use of whatever functionality they need to enhance it going down the line.
Right. So ultimately, I mean, the business goal sounds like they wanted it to be community building. So is it because Nat Geo has offices worldwide and they wanted to connect, make this more of a global community, or what was the situation there?
Yeah, they have offices outside of their headquarters in DC, so it was bringing more people together besides their central office. And it goes into just sharing the different aspects of the company. I mean, they actually have a neat little capability. They can change the background of the intranet. Like right now, I think it's a bunch of National Geographic covers, but they might change it based on the season or whatever. It's little things that drive people to come back to the site, and it keeps the interest level up beyond it just being, okay, this is where I can go to get my HR documents or something. There is something to that, but a lot more of the drawback to the site is the collaboration that can be used among the users, not just in one office, but across multiple offices. And they've used it to schedule hangouts and get-togethers, and again, outside of just your working group, but interest groups. Like maybe there's a bowling league. I'm not sure that there is one, but there might be a bowling group, for example.
Right, and I know that they were very excited at Synergy to win that Site of the Year award. Seemed very happy with the product that you guys had developed. So jumping over to the technology, you mentioned using smart forms as underlying architecture for basically where you needed to go above and beyond what Ektron provided using out-of-the-box community controls. Is that right?
Yeah.
So are the smart forms replacing that functionality, or are they supplementing that functionality?
In this case, it's replacing the functionality. Again, the definition of what they wanted to do was malleable at the time. So rather than lock into what Ektron can provide, which is robust, it might not accommodate future growth, or it might not have had every capability they were looking for at that time. So using the smart forms to do this kind of information allowed it to be a lot more flexible, so we can add fields when we need to add them, or change business rules for workflows or anything that needs to be done. We're not locked in necessarily to a single pathway, so it gives a little bit more future proofing, I guess you could say.
Okay, and how is the performance of that? How do you make sure that it is performant?
Oh, it's cached very well.
Yeah.
We're actually it was originally built with caching kind of hard-coded in. We're actually kind of adapting into the where we can control the cache through the work area using the SmartForm dictionary idea that we've talked about before on office hours. So if we ever need to change a cache, you can go in there and change the cache times, make it longer caching or whatever. With the profiles, there's an information dump from their HR system, and that gets stored into the user properties, and then there's a two-way communication basically. So people update information in their Ektron profile through the intranet, it can get back up to the HR system for certain fields, of course, not every field, but it allows a lot more flexibility and communication between systems.
Yeah, so have you guys packaged that for reuse across other sites, or is it really built for Nat Geo?
Some of it was built for Nat Geo, but some of the functionality, yeah, we're packaged up and using where other clients are looking for that kind of functionality. The good thing is that even if they don't use the specific functionality, a lot of the concepts are very mutable over from one project to another project. Smart form technology is very, robust and expansive, so it can take just basic concepts and bring it over. Some of the stuff around search also can be packaged up and moved from one project to another. We just actually upgraded just recently to the 9.1 and Solar. So again, there's search capabilities there that can be dropped from one project to another.
Very cool. So Chris, I want to give you a chance to speak. I know it was kind of Ken and me for a few minutes. Do you have any questions for Ken on that implementation before we get started on one of your projects?
I'd actually be really interested to hear a little bit about what functionality the smart forms are replacing from the community. Just kind of wondering how that was architected.
It's replacing some of the community features. So like the discussion forums, for example, aren't using the forums in the Ektron. They're using smart forms instead, and they're just layered up to use the smart forms. They're not. It's also using CMS members. It doesn't use Page Builder in this implementation. So they're using CMS users for the logins. If we were to kind of go back and say, let's enhance this further or build on this, we might use memberships and membership groups to do that flexible, more, do that flexibility of create a custom group. You don't necessarily need to do it in the smart form. You know, again, it can kind of depend sometimes if the rules, the specs are 100% locked down, or if there's still a little bit of thought into what the flexibility needs to be on it. And I think also some discoverability can come into play in this. I was working on a project more recently that was using notifications out of the box and using the community features out of the box, and some of the forums never show up in the work area because they're considered private in some of the membership groups. And also the discussion forums in the work area, if you're looking for a content ID, if somebody says, here's a content ID, and you do a search for the ID, it doesn't show up. So with the smart form, you get a little bit more discoverability for hunting this stuff down if there's some troubleshooting that needs to be done, or you just want to make sure everything's in working order as you're developing it. So I think that's the reason when it went that route rather than necessarily Ektron out of the box stuff for everything.
Sure, great.
Yeah, very cool. So Chris, is there any specific project? I know we've talked about Jazz a little bit. Happy to talk about that some more. Was there any specific project you'd like to outline for how you're kind of solving problems in a similar way?
Sure, I think that Jazz might be a good one. I know you guys discussed that briefly last week from I think with Richard from Jazz from a technical aspect. I think that maybe from a business side of things, they've got some pretty comprehensive requirements. Being one of the largest, I think they are the largest regional airline in Canada. They're trying to cater to the needs of everybody from pilots, the flight attendants, to administrative office folks, to the folks that are on the ground, the mechanics, the folks that are bringing the planes in the tower. They really have a broad range of people that they're trying to cater a website to. And then thinking about that from a security aspect, how do we allow these types of individuals who may or may not be within the bounds of Jazz's network to be able to access this private intranet without having to be on VPN and other things. And furthermore, what are we doing about the different types of devices that are going to be accessing the network? Because a lot of the pilots and things no longer carry around those big flight bags anymore. They carry around iPads or different tablets. So I think a lot of the business problems we're trying to solve for them through the rebuild of their intranet really came down to these technological hurdles we had to kind of overcome and really find a way to use Ektron to manifest the data in a way that makes sense for all these different use cases.
All right, so let's dig in a little bit to some of those use cases in a second, but I think Jazz's ultimate business goal for this was quite different from Nat Geo. I mean, Nat Geo was focusing on community building through their worldwide network of employees, but Jazz has got a little bit of a different goal. What's their goal for their intranet?
Well, their goal is to make sure the information is as relevant as possible for the different groups, because they are so big. They really had a problem finding accurate documentation. They had problems with messages. So this is one thing that we use Ektron for pretty heavily with some custom things that we wrote. But when you're in a government-regulated industry, let's pretend that they had to send out a notification about some change on planes or some new policy that they basically have to institute immediately. That actually has to go out to all of the folks within the organization, and it has to be read and acknowledged upon that it has been read by those individuals. So we had to build a pretty custom tool that actually allows that, first off, them to subscribe to these alerts, which we do use the Ektron Web Alert functionality for. Very custom implementation of it, but it's using Ektron's core Web Alerts on the back end. But also when they log in, they're logging into a production tier of servers. They can read and acknowledge those messages or save them to their favorites for later, whatever it might be. And that actually synchronizes back to a reporting tier with eSync. And that gets sent off and shipped off to the government for actual regulatory purposes. So, one of their major goals was streamline that process, make it as easy as possible. These things are required readings. We need to make sure this information is getting out to the appropriate folks, and we need to also ensure that they are reading it because it is a requirement for their employment. So I think that was a pretty big business goal that they had, which we were able to accomplish pretty seamlessly, in addition to the fact that all of these things had to be done on a variety of different devices and touch points. So whether that be an iPhone or a tablet or whatever it might be, we had to make sure they could accommodate all of those things on those different interfaces.
Yeah, or even a shared environment like a workstation inside of a hangar or something like that. So it's not everybody has a personal device. So
common use terminals were a big problem for them in their old intranet situation, and we actually were able to solve that pretty readily with the new internet build. So, but absolutely, common use terminals were a big problem.
Yeah. So what kind of tooling and architecture helped you solve those problems?
So with the obviously for the messages outside of custom API calls and things like that, we were pretty aggressively using eSync to synchronize data back and forth, which was something they were not doing in the past. They used to have different SQL jobs that were moving data around. We really streamlined that. And then I think that we have a hybrid login functionality that uses web forms for folks that are not within the network, that are common use terminals, or coming in on an iPad, etc. And then if you're inside the network, we actually authenticate against Active Directory real time. So as soon as we authenticate against the site. And part of the reason it was important to authenticate is, of course, you want to get your messages, the ones that are specific for you. But there are a lot of things on the website that you can actually kind of favorite. So using a hybrid solution with Ektron's content IDs, asset IDs, etc., and a few custom tables that we move around with eSync, they're actually able to favorite messages in the message center, or content on a page, or even documents within the DMS, and then have their own kind of customizable, sortable, reorderable favorite situation available to them as well. So kind of using all of those different pieces, with eSync being one of the backbones of kind of the synchronization between the different tiers, we were able to solve those problems pretty readily.
So are you guys taking advantage of any of the eSync strategies at this point, being able to trigger custom code based on an eSync?
We use a lot of strategies in general on the site. So usually there's a lot of content strategies that we use as content gets published, but we also have implemented some strategies so when the eSync fires off, it does clear the cache on certain components of the front-end servers. So because they have so many individuals accessing the site at the same time, so they could theoretically have 8,000 simultaneous users on the website, which is a fair amount of traffic at any one given point in time. And we want to make sure that things are cached appropriately. But as new content comes out, specifically mission-critical content, such as messages from the message center, or things like that, we've got to make sure that those items get cleared so they show up immediately. Because the last thing we want is a notification alert going out saying, hey, there's a new message you have to read, log in, and then they get there and it's not there yet because it's cached. So.
Right. Yeah, and I know that one of your guys, a guy named Brad, who I cannot get on office hours in spite of my multiple attempts, is kind of a caching expert. So yeah, I'm sure he was pivotal in creating some of the code that made that possible.
Yeah, there was a fair amount of different caching strategies going on that website, and Brad was most certainly very instrumental in determining what that was going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. So I know that you guys have some packaged pre-built items that are fairly unique to WSOL. Do you want to dive into those a little bit? Because I think that they and dive into those from a high level and talk about the problems they solve, I suppose. And if we need to go into tech, we can. But I just think they're very interesting in their approach and the kinds of things that you guys are able to do for your clients right now.
Sure, absolutely. So we pretty much have two primary products that we utilize with our clients, and then three. And then there's another one coming out that we'll be announcing at Synergy, which should be pretty interesting. But basically, the first one is something we created a long time ago. If anybody's attended the Ektron Synergy conference, they've most certainly seen it, heard about it. But it's a product we loosely named the Super Template. It's been around for like 6 years or so. And basically, what it does is it helps deal with a lot of the problems that a lot of CMS platforms have, where pages are, there's a lot of templates that drive the website. So the super template idea is that it utilizes kind of standard Ektron functionality, whether that be page builder, whether that be metadata, etc., to allow content editors to construct a page and layouts, but being bound by a series of business rules so they can be as flexible as we want them to be as content owners, but not be so flexible they make the site look like a carnival. So it's kind of like a singular template system that could run the whole site, and it consolidates all of the data calls for Ektron into one layer. So all the APIs are in one spot. So if Ektron did have a deprecated API in a future build, you could very easily update that one area, and then it calls that data layer to change it through the rest of the site. So that's one of the products that we have a lot of work on. The product that Jazz was built on is the next level of the super template, something we call Layout Manager, and that actually uses the hybrid of Page Builder and the different set of permissions that we've implemented through the product to allow them to put data in specific zones of the website, but actually be permissioned so you can't put widgets where they're not supposed to be. With that, with Brad's help and kind of leaning towards what Ken was alluding to earlier, the caching strategy on that's on a widget-by-widget basis. So you can actually, and the widgets aren't what you would normally experience. So right now where you would have a widget for, say, a content block or a menu, our widgets in the Layout Manager are layout specific. So you would drop on a listing widget and you would say, if this listing widget's on the page, this particular layout, look to the metadata. I want it to read from this metadata property, and I'd like it to do these things and sort in this way. So it's not necessarily a list summary control or anything like that. It's specific to a configuration of a layout. So, and then I think the third one you're probably alluding to is the HubSpot connector with the different CMS platforms, and that's something that we have and we're using on our site right now, and that we're planning on using on our future build of our website. And we have a lot of clients using it, but basically what it comes down to is utilizing kind of the brains of HubSpot within the context of the Ektron system. So as people do things, as website visitors convert and change different things through conversions on the website or through HubSpot, we can actually adjust and target the content data on the site based on what they've done, whether that be watch a webinar or download a white paper, whatever it is. We can actually customize the website experience to offer different content offers or conversion opportunities throughout the funnel based on where they're at in the marketing funnel inside HubSpot.
Which is very exciting stuff. I mean, that's really the direction everything's heading right now. And I'm sure that you'll expand that integration to cover other marketing platforms as you guys see fit. I imagine HubSpot was just a logical starting point for you.
We have a similar one that we've done for Marketo.
Yeah.
It's not, we've done it for a few clients, but it's not something we've packaged up for resale yet, but it is something on our roadmap.
Very cool. Very cool. Ken, do you have any questions for Chris on any of that?
Yeah, one thought I was having while you were talking about like the pilots and the iPads and all, have you guys thought about doing like an offline with the iPads, like maybe an app that you can log into and like read the data down via web service from Ektron and like store it in local data on iPad? Because I guess pilots don't have, I don't know what the internet rules are anymore, especially Canada versus the United States for in-flight, but if there are documents that they could use or expanding it out for maps or updates or whatever they may need to have in flight.
Yeah, we've definitely we've actually taken a look at that in a bunch of different areas. Either local storage, which is kind of what you're referring to through the site itself, or an actual native app that pulls the data down and stores it locally as well. We've kind of been in conversations with Jazz about that, and those are in different aspects and different areas of movement on their side right now. But yeah, those are very, very interesting concepts, which I think what you're saying is exactly the direction they want to go.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool. So we have about 5 minutes left. I just want to toss out a reminder. We've had a couple of people tweeting, but anybody has any questions in these final 5 minutes about anything we've discussed so far or anything Ektron or web-related in general, then please jump onto Twitter, ask your question with the Ektron OH hashtag. And so with that, yeah, so I know Chris, Jazz is also looking at a kiosk solution, which we discussed with them a couple of weeks ago on office hours. Are you guys involved with that at all, or is that something that's still internal to them? And
Right now it's kind of internal to them. We are talking strategically about what that could mean. The kiosk solution could be a website-driven thing, and we could basically put one of those, you've seen them, the touchscreen apparatuses, which is over top of a monitor. We've done something very similar for a couple of our other clients that wanted to kind of showcase their website at their national conference. So I think that there might be a couple ways that we can approach that, most certainly.
So
they're handling that.
So when you're looking at a solution like that or a requirement like that, does that alter the way you look at the content architecture, your smart forms, and the way that you actually build and enter content? Does it alter that at all, or is what is the strategy there?
Well, what we try to do is follow the code philosophy, so create once, publish everywhere type of situation. So we try to make the content as scalable as possible, at least the content models at least, so that if we do need to append them later. So usually we do use smart forms for a lot of reasons. Maybe at a smaller breakpoint, we don't want to show certain fields necessarily to make sure the page is shorter and able to be viewed quickly. But yeah, the content models, we try to make them scalable so that when we do run into a situation like a kiosk, and if they wanted to show different content within the context of the pages, we could easily accommodate that through the adjusted content models. So yeah, absolutely, I think that when we're looking at building a website and understanding that we don't know what interface is going to be available today versus tomorrow, kiosks are just another logical path forward in our mind as to where the website could go next. So absolutely.
Definitely. So I call that content future-proofing.
Yep.
To a certain degree. I mean, you're building it to be separate from the design, or at least as much as possible. I think to a certain degree you can't escape having some markup in there, but you can separate out as many fields as possible so that you can use those wherever, whenever you want.
Absolutely.
And that's a big point from Karen McGrain too. I've seen her speak, and digital signage was one of the examples that she used, and that's why I find that a bit more interesting and a different way of thinking about things. And you don't want to name your content based on where you're going to use it today. You want to name your content based on what it is. So you don't call your smart form accordion, for example, because that's too use case specific.
Absolutely. I think that I was actually, coincidentally enough, I had a meeting with Karen McGrain and Ethan Markoff last Friday, and we're looking at working together for a hospital client we have who has somewhere around 96,000 pages of content on their website. So we're moving into a responsive design project for them, and we really need to take a look at those content models. So we were actually chatting about a couple of different ways we could go about that together to figure that out for them. So yeah, she's all about most certainly content modeling, and yeah, she's such a expert in the industry when it comes to that. So.
Oh yeah, she's absolutely brilliant, and if anybody has a chance to see her speak or to get to contract with her or just have a conversation with her, I highly recommend it. Just such an expert in that field. So we're down to the last minute, and I know both of you guys at your respective companies are doing a lot of great work, and so I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of tell the viewers how to get in touch with you. So Ken, I know that you've got a contact us slide that you got from your marketing team. If you want to throw that up and just let people know how to reach out to Celerity, who's based in DC.
Yeah, just outside DC in Tyson's Corner. So can you see it now?
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, we work with Ektron. Myself and Dave Artemick are both Ektron MVPs, and of course John Diamond is our Ektron guru who did a lot with the NG Connect site and pretty much babied that thing from the ground up, and I just take care of it every once in a while now. He did a really good job with it. But yeah, we won the Site of the Year for that last Synergy, and you can get a hold of us, phone number, website, Twitter address are at the bottom. We are more than happy to help out with any Ektron implementation you want to pitch our way.
Great, and yeah, I know that you guys would be happy to discuss with anybody else who might be interested the solution you built for Nat Geo as well.
Yep.
So, much appreciated. Thank you, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris, how might we get in touch with you and your team? You just call Joe Mayberry, basically, and he'll take care of you. No, you can hit me up. You can hit us up on WSOL.com. There's a lot of contact forms on there. You can hit me up on Twitter. Surprisingly enough, I do answer those, even though James thinks I might not. So but yeah, wsol.com or hit me up on Twitter. Happy to chat with you about anything.
Great. So thank you guys very much for joining. I again just want to reiterate, I do think you're all doing awesome work, and we're very proud to have you as partners. And look forward to working with you guys in the future. Chris, I'd love to know how that cooperation with Ethan and Karen works out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fairly comprehensive project, so we need to bring in the big guns on coping content to make sure that everybody's on the same page. That's for sure.
Well, I definitely think you've got the right team. So, yeah, exciting stuff. I'd love to hear more.
What does Ethan know about responsive web design? I mean, really?
We
figured if we found Mr. Responsive Design and Mrs. Mobile, we should be in the right area.
That'd be an interesting baby.
Got a good start. Yeah. And then, of course, version 2 of the responsive web design book comes out next month. So, I already told Ethan on Twitter to shut up and take my money, because that's where it's going. All right, thank you guys very much.
Are you afraid somebody's going to ask for version 2 of the Ektron Rocks book next?
People have asked for it. I have the raw files for that, and we'll see where that goes next. There's not any immediate plan right now, but we're prepared to do that planning, so we'll see where it goes.
Cool.
All right, thank you guys very much for joining. Happy to have you. Chris, I know it's been a while since you've been on. I appreciate you coming on again. We'll try to do this more often in the future.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's just Joe Mayberry steals the spotlight all the time. That's why.
Yeah, that's Joe. You know him. It's all Joe all the time. I mean, who else would do this? I mean, come on,
Joe.
All right,
I'm surprised he's not tweeting about it, but there you go.
Yeah, if he's not watching, he should be. But all right, thank you guys. We'll see you next time.
All right, take care. Bye now.